Welcome back to another episode of Speak English Podcast.
That's right. If you're looking to improve your English and sound more natural, you're in the right place.
Exactly. Our goal is to help you practice English in a fun and effective way.
And today's topic is really important. Many learners study English from textbooks, but when they speak, they sound too formal or unnatural.
Yeah, and that's because real-life English is full of expressions that you won't find in traditional lessons.
So, today, we'll teach you some common expressions that native speakers use all the time.
By the end of this episode, you'll know how to replace textbook phrases with real, natural English.
This will help you sound more fluent and confident in everyday conversations.
So, if you want to take your English to the next level, make sure to stay until the end.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this.
All right, let's get started. When learning a new language, most people start with textbooks. And that makes sense. Textbooks provide structure, grammar rules, and vocabulary lists that help build a solid foundation. But here's the problem. Textbook English often sounds robotic. It's not how people actually speak in real life. Imagine walking into a coffee shop and saying, "Excuse me, I would like to purchase a cup of coffee, please." That's grammatically perfect, but no native speaker talks like that.
Exactly. A native speaker would probably say something like, "Hey, can I get a coffee?" Or even just, "One coffee, please." It's faster, more natural, and more relaxed. The issue is that many learners don't realize there's a big gap between what they study and what they hear in real conversations. They spend years memorizing formal phrases, but when they finally speak to native speakers, they sound too stiff. Or worse, they struggle to understand because real-life English is much more dynamic.
That's a huge frustration for learners. They think, I know all these words and grammar rules, so why do I still sound unnatural? The truth is, textbook English isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. Think about how you learned your native language. You didn't start by memorizing rules. You listened, copied what people said, and picked up expressions naturally. That's exactly how native English speakers communicate. They use contractions, slang, and informal phrases that make their speech more fluid and expressive.
And that's what we're going to focus on today. We'll show you some real-life expressions that will help you sound more like a native speaker. But before we dive into specific phrases, let's take a look at why native speakers talk the way they do.
So, why do native speakers talk so differently from textbook English? The answer is simple. Language is always evolving. People naturally look for the fastest and easiest way to communicate. Instead of saying, I am going to the store, they shorten it to, I'm going to the store, or even, I'm going to the store. It's not because they don't know grammar. It's just that spoken English prioritizes speed and efficiency over perfect sentence structure.
Exactly. Think about how people text each other. No one writes, "I am not sure if I will be able to attend the event." They just say, "Not sure if I can make it." It's the same in conversation. People drop unnecessary words and use shortcuts. That's why learners often struggle when they first talk to native speakers. They expect full sentences, but real conversations are full of contractions, reductions, and informal expressions.
Right. And there's another reason native speakers sound different: intonation and rhythm. English isn't just about words, it's also about how those words are said. Native speakers stress certain words, link sounds together, and even change pronunciation depending on the speed of their speech. For example, "What do you want to do?" often sounds like, "What do you want to do?" in casual speech. If you're used to textbook English, that can be really confusing at first.
That's why listening practice is so important. The more you expose yourself to real conversations, the more natural these patterns will feel. But don't worry. You don't have to memorize every slang word or reduction. Instead, focus on a few key expressions that you can start using right away. And that's exactly what we're going to do next.
Now that we understand why native speakers sound different, let's dive into some essential expressions that will make your English sound more natural. These are phrases you hear all the time in casual conversations, but they rarely appear in textbooks. Let's start with a classic one. What's up? Instead of asking, how are you? Native speakers often say, what's up? Which is just a casual way of checking in with someone. The best part? You don't need a complicated answer. You can simply say, not much, or just hanging out.
Yes. And another super common one is no worries. In a textbook, you might see that's okay or don't worry about it. But in real life, no worries is what people actually say when they want to tell someone it's not a problem. For example, if someone says, sorry for being late, a native speaker would probably respond with no worries rather than it is fine.
That's a great one. Here's another. I'm good. If someone asks, do you want more coffee? A textbook might tell you to say, no, thank you. But most native speakers will just say, I'm good. It's short, simple, and completely natural.
And let's not forget, you're kidding. Instead of saying, I cannot believe it, or are you serious? Native speakers often say, you're kidding, when they hear surprising news. It's a quick way to show shock or disbelief. So, if your friend says, I just won the lottery, your natural reaction could be, you're kidding, instead of, I cannot believe this information.
Exactly. These small changes make a huge difference in how natural you sound. But expressions aren't just about sounding casual. They also help you connect with people better. And that's why the next thing we'll look at is how to respond in a way that keeps conversations going smoothly. So now that we've seen some common expressions, let's talk about another key skill: keeping a conversation going. A lot of English learners struggle with this. They might answer a question, but then the conversation just stops. Native speakers, on the other hand, naturally keep conversations flowing. And one simple trick is using follow-up questions. Instead of just answering with yes or no, you add something extra. For example, if someone asks, did you have a good weekend? Instead of just saying yes, you could say, yeah, it was great. I went to the beach. How about you?
That's so important. Asking, how about you, is such a simple way to keep a conversation alive. Another trick is using echo questions, repeating part of what the other person said with a little curiosity. Like, if someone tells you, I just started learning Spanish, instead of just saying cool, you could say, oh, you're learning Spanish? That's awesome. How's it going so far? This makes you sound engaged and interested.
Exactly. And here's another way to keep things natural, using short, natural responses like, no way, that's awesome, or seriously? This is what native speakers do all the time to show they're listening. Instead of just nodding or saying, okay, these little phrases keep the conversation lively. Let's say your friend tells you, I met a celebrity yesterday. Instead of just saying, really? You can react with, no way. Who did you meet? See how that naturally keeps the conversation moving?
I love that. And another great technique is sharing something similar. If someone tells you they just started going to the gym, instead of just saying, that's nice, you could say, oh, that's cool. I started working out last month too. What kind of workouts do you do? This makes the conversation feel like a real back and forth, rather than just answering questions.
Right. Conversations aren't just about answering questions. They're about building on what the other person says. And once you master this, talking to native speakers will feel much more natural. But there's still something really important we need to cover. What about slang and expressions that change depending on the situation? Let's talk about that next. So, now that we know how to keep a conversation going, let's talk about something that can make you sound even more natural: slang and casual expressions. This is one area where a lot of English learners feel lost. You learn formal English in school, but when you listen to native speakers, they sound totally different. That's because real-life English is full of slang and informal phrases. And the tricky part? Slang changes all the time. What was cool 10 years ago might sound outdated today.
That's so true. Some slang phrases stick around for decades, like cool or awesome, but others disappear fast. For example, people used to say rad a lot in the 80s and 90s, but now that sounds a bit old-fashioned. Instead, people today might say that's fire or that's lit to mean something is really good.
Exactly. And different groups of people use different slang. Young people have their own expressions, and older generations might use different ones. Also, slang can change depending on where you are. A phrase that's common in New York might not be as popular in California. But don't worry, you don't need to memorize every slang word out there. The best way to learn slang is by paying attention to how native speakers talk, especially in TV shows, movies, and real conversations.
Right? And one of the best ways to sound natural is by using some slang, but not overdoing it. If you try to use too much slang all at once, it might sound unnatural. A good strategy is to start with just a few common expressions. For example, instead of always saying very good, you could say awesome, amazing, or great. Instead of saying I'm very tired, you could say I'm exhausted or even I'm wiped out.
Yes, and another thing to remember, some slang is too informal for professional situations. You wouldn't say, "That's lit" in a business meeting, but with friends, totally fine. Understanding when and where to use slang is just as important as knowing the words themselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting point. Some expressions are common in one country, but not in another. American English has slang that's totally different from British English or Australian English. So, let's talk about that next.
All right, now that we've talked about slang and casual expressions, let's move on to an interesting topic: the difference between American, British, and Australian English. This is something a lot of learners struggle with. They might know the basic words, but the accents, vocabulary, and even grammar can be quite different. Let's start with the basics. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, the first thing that most learners notice is the vocabulary. For example, in the US, we say apartment, but in the UK, they use flat. In Australia, you'll hear both flat and unit, depending on the area. So, even though these words refer to the same thing, it's important to know which version people use in different places.
That's a great point. And it's not just vocabulary, but also the way people say things. In the US, we say elevator, while in the UK, it's called a lift. In Australia, both terms are used, but lift might be more common. And then there's the whole issue of spelling. Americans tend to use I's at the end of words like realize or organize, while British English uses is. So, realize and organize are more common in the UK.
Yes. And then there's the pronunciation. That's a big one. Even when two countries are speaking the same word, they might say it completely differently. For example, Americans might pronounce schedule as schedule, but in the UK, it's schedule. And Australians? Well, they often have a more relaxed version of the British pronunciation.
Totally. And let's not forget about the grammar differences. In British English, it's common to use the present perfect tense in situations where Americans would use the simple past. For example, a Brit might say, "I've just eaten lunch," while an American would say, "I just ate lunch." It's small, but it can make a big difference in sound.
Definitely. And while we're on the topic, let's not ignore the Australian English, which has a unique character of its own. Australians are known for shortening words. Instead of afternoon, they'll say arvo. And instead of breakfast, it's often brekkie. It's fun and informal, but might sound a bit strange to someone learning English.
Yeah, Australian English can be a bit tricky for learners who are used to British or American English. But once you start recognizing these differences, it's actually really fun to compare the variations. Now that we know how different English can be, how can learners practically use these variations in their daily lives?
Well, the key is to be aware of the differences, but not to stress about them too much. If you're talking to someone from the US, don't worry if you use a British word by mistake. They'll understand. And if you're in Australia, don't panic if you don't know all the slang. People appreciate it when you try to speak their way, but they're also forgiving.
Moving on to another common phrase, let's talk about pick up. Now, this one can be a little tricky, right, Sarah? It's not always obvious what it means. Pick up can have multiple meanings depending on the context. One common meaning is to go and get something. Like if you're running errands or buying groceries. For example, you might say, I need to pick up some milk and bread from the store. That's an easy one to use when you need to get something.
Exactly. But pick up can also mean to fetch someone. So if you're going to grab a friend from the airport, you'd say, I'm going to pick up my friend. It's a casual way to describe getting someone, whether it's at the airport, train station, or even just a ride around town. It's so versatile and easy to use in different situations.
Another important phrase to understand in daily conversations is run errands. This one's pretty common when you're talking about everyday tasks. Running errands refers to completing small tasks or chores that typically take you outside the house. You might say, I have to run some errands after work today.
Yes, it's all about those little things you have to do that keep your day moving, like going to the bank, picking up dry cleaning, or mailing a letter. It's the stuff that adds up over the course of the day, but isn't too complicated. So next time someone asks, what are you up to today? And you're heading to the store, you can just say, I'm running some errands.
Now let's talk about another phrase that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Grab a bite. This phrase comes up often when you want to grab a quick meal or snack. It's a casual way of saying, I'm going to eat something, but it usually implies a quick and easy option, not a full meal. If you're at work and it's lunchtime, you might say to a colleague, want to grab a bite at the cafe downstairs?
It's such a simple and natural phrase to use when you're in a rush or just want something quick. Imagine you're on the go and you need something light, not a big dinner. Grab a bite is your go-to expression. It's one of those phrases that makes you sound relaxed and confident while talking about food.
Now, there's another expression that's super useful when you're at work or during a busy day. Call it a day. This one means that you've finished all your tasks for the day and it's time to stop working. For instance, after a long day at the office, you might say to your colleagues, I think I'm going to call it a day. It's a great way to signal that you're done for the day and ready to relax.
Exactly, and it's a nice way to wrap up a busy day. You could also use it when you're tired of doing something and need a break. It's not just about work, it could also apply to any activity you're involved in. So, if you've been working on a project or just need some time to unwind, you could say, I'm going to call it a day and take some time for yourself.
Let's now switch gears a bit and discuss take a break. This is something we all need, especially when we're working hard or studying. Take a break simply means to stop what you're doing for a short period to rest. You can take a break from work, studying, or even from a long conversation if you need to clear your mind. For example, you could say, I'm going to take a break and grab a coffee.
That's right, David. Taking breaks is important for productivity and mental well-being. It's not just about stopping to rest, it's about recharging yourself so that you can come back to whatever you were doing with more energy and focus. So, don't feel guilty for taking breaks during your day, whether it's a short walk, a coffee, or even just breathing deeply for a moment.
Moving on, let's talk about a phrase that's all about being productive. Get things done. This one is motivating, don't you think, Sarah? When you say, I need to get things done today, you're setting the intention to be productive and accomplish all the tasks on your list. It's a great mindset to have when you're feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities.
Absolutely, David. Get things done is all about staying focused and pushing through to complete your goals. Whether it's work, personal tasks, or something else, it's a phrase that reminds you to keep moving forward. You can say it to yourself when you need a little extra motivation, or even tell a friend, let's get things done today.
Another phrase that's often used in casual conversations is catch up. You might hear it a lot, but it has a couple of meanings. First, you can use it to reconnect with someone and talk about what's been happening in their life. For example, let's catch up soon. I want to hear about your new job. It's all about getting together and sharing updates.
Yes, and catch up can also mean to make up for something you've fallen behind on, like work or sleep. For instance, if you've been sick and need to catch up on your work, you could say, I need to catch up on my emails this afternoon. It's a very versatile phrase that can apply to people or tasks.
Another useful phrase in everyday conversation is in a hurry. This one is all about rushing, especially when you don't have enough time. It's a simple way to explain that you need to do something quickly. For example, if you're late for a meeting, you might say, sorry, I'm in a hurry. It's often used when you're on a tight schedule.
Exactly. When you're in a hurry, everything moves faster, and you might find yourself rushing from one task to the next. It's a phrase that really captures that sense of urgency we all feel from time to time. Next time you're running late, just tell someone, I'm in a hurry, and they'll understand immediately.
Now, let's talk about another phrase that's so common in casual English. Take it easy. It's a great way to tell someone to relax or to not stress out. It can be used as advice or even as a way to say goodbye. For instance, if a friend is going through a tough time, you might say, hey, take it easy. Everything will be fine. It's like offering a moment of calm in a stressful situation.
Right, David. Take it easy is also something you can say when you want someone to slow down or not overdo things. It's all about calming things down and reminding yourself or others to not get overwhelmed. You could also use it at the end of a conversation, like saying, take care and take it easy. It's a friendly way to wish someone well.
Speaking of relaxation, we also have the phrase wind down. This one is all about calming down after a busy day or activity. If you've been working non-stop, you might say, I need to wind down before bed. It's about taking some time to relax and let go of the day's stress.
Exactly. Wind down is perfect for when you're easing yourself into a more relaxed state, whether it's after work or after an intense workout. It's not just about resting, it's about creating a calm environment so you can fully relax and recharge. So, after a long day, maybe you take a warm bath or listen to some music to help you wind down.
Now, here's another great phrase to help you sound more natural. Hang out. It's used when you want to spend time with friends or family, but in a casual way. If you're meeting up with someone to relax and chat, you might say, let's hang out this weekend. It's one of those phrases that makes conversations feel more laid back and informal.
Yes, and it's perfect for making plans that don't involve anything too fancy. You don't have to have a specific plan, it's just about enjoying each other's company. So, instead of saying, let's meet up for dinner, you might say, let's just hang out and catch up. It's less pressure and more fun.
Another expression we often hear in casual conversations is, give it a shot. This one is great when you're encouraging someone to try something new or take a chance. For example, if a friend is nervous about a new job or project, you might say, why not give it a shot? It's a supportive way to say, go for it.
Exactly, David. Give it a shot is a way to tell someone that it's okay to take risks, and it's also a way to encourage experimentation. You could say, I've never tried that before, but I'll give it a shot. It's all about being open-minded and ready to try something new.
And we've got a really useful phrase next, figure out. This is one of those expressions that come up a lot in problem-solving situations. It means to understand something or solve a problem. For example, I'm trying to figure out how to fix this issue at work. It's a very common way of saying that you're in the process of solving something.
Yes, and it's not just for work situations. You can use figure out for anything you need to solve or understand. Maybe you're figuring out how to organize your schedule or figuring out what to cook for dinner. It's a super flexible phrase that helps you describe the process of finding a solution or answer.
Next up is get back to someone. This is a phrase you'll often hear in professional settings, especially when you need to reply to someone later. For example, you might say, "I'll get back to you after the meeting." It's a way of saying that you'll respond to a person or provide more information at a later time.
Exactly, and it's a polite way to let someone know that you're not ignoring them. You just need time to gather information or respond properly. It's often used when you're too busy to respond right away, but you don't want to leave the other person hanging. You could say, "I'll get back to you as soon as I can."
Another one that I really like is keep in touch. This is often used to let someone know you want to maintain communication over time. For instance, after meeting someone new, you could say, "Let's keep in touch." It's a casual, friendly way to make sure you stay connected.
Yes, keep in touch is all about maintaining your relationship, whether it's with family, friends, or even colleagues. You might say it at the end of a meeting or after leaving a place where you met someone. It's a nice, open invitation to stay in contact. You can also say it when you're planning to reach out in the future. "Let's keep in touch. I'll email you next week."
Moving on, let's explore another phrase. Let someone know. This one is very straightforward, but it's super important. It simply means to inform someone or share information with them. For example, "I'll let you know when the meeting starts." It's perfect for situations where you need to communicate something important or just provide an update.
Exactly, David. "Let someone know" is another phrase that's great for keeping people in the loop. Whether it's about a change in plans or just giving an update, it's the perfect way to keep someone informed. You can say it in a casual conversation, "Let me know if you need help," or in a more formal context, "I'll let you know once I receive the document."
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope these real-life English expressions help you sound more natural and confident in your daily conversations. Remember, it's not just about memorizing phrases, but using them in the right context to really connect with others.
Exactly. And don't forget to practice these expressions in real situations. The more you use them, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become. So, keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process.
We're so glad you joined us today. If you found these tips useful, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the Speak English podcast. And while you're at it, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it.
That's right. Also, share this episode with your friends who are learning English. The more, the merrier. And as always, keep listening, keep learning, and we'll be back next time with more tips to help you sound like a native speaker.
Thanks again for tuning in. See you in the next episode of Speak English podcast. Take care and keep practicing those expressions.
Bye for now. Stay safe and keep improving your English. See you next time.